There's a specific kind of tired that has nothing to do with your body. You've slept 8 hours. You've done nothing physically demanding. And yet, by mid-afternoon, you feel like you've already run a marathon. Not in your legs, in your head. Because your mind has been running since you woke up. Replaying last Tuesday's conversation. Quietly stress testing a decision you haven't even made yet. Building out 17 different versions of a scenario that may never happen. And here's what makes this so strange: the people this happens to are often the sharpest, most emotionally perceptive people in the room. Which means the very thing that makes them remarkable is also quietly exhausting them. From the inside out, and mostly in silence. Welcome to Decoded Psychology, where we go beneath the surface of everyday human behavior and uncover the forces quietly shaping your decisions, your relationships, and the story you tell yourself about who you are. So let's start where the research starts. Psychologists call this pattern maladaptive rumination, and before you mentally file that away as a clinical label, let me tell you what it actually means to live with it. It means your brain running a loop. Not because you're anxious, not because something went wrong, but because your mind is very, very good at pattern recognition. It's scanning, constantly, looking for meaning, anticipating consequences, cataloging possibilities. The problem isn't that it does this. The problem is that it never gets the signal to stop. Neurologically, what's happening is a collision between two systems. The prefrontal cortex, which handles planning, analysis, and self-reflection, stays unusually active even during what should be rest. Meanwhile, the default mode network, the part of your brain that generates internal monologue, keeps churning. The result is a mind that's essentially always online, always auditing, always rehearsing conversations that haven't happened yet with people who don't know they're being rehearsed with. And this doesn't just appear out of nowhere. For a large number of overthinkers, this pattern was built slowly and often invisibly in childhood. When a kid grows up in an environment where the emotional temperature changed without warning, where a parent's mood was unpredictable, or where small mistakes had consequences that felt much too large, neurobiology does something genuinely logical. It learns to think ahead, to anticipate. If you can model what's coming, maybe you can get ahead of it. Maybe you can protect yourself. That's not a flaw. That's a highly adaptive response to genuine uncertainty. The nervous system isn't malfunctioning. It learned exactly what it was taught. Now, not all overthinking is the same, and this distinction matters more than most people realize. Psychologists separate it into two types. The first is reflective rumination, turning inward to understand yourself, process what's happened, make sense of things. When it's balanced, this is actually a strength. It's associated with higher emotional intelligence, deeper self-awareness, and the kind of nuanced thinking that most people don't slow down enough to do. The second type is brooding rumination, and this one is where the cost starts to show. Brooding is more passive. It's dwelling without momentum. The thoughts circle, but they don't go anywhere. Sleep suffers. Decisions become paralyzed. Every social interaction gets quietly overanalyzed afterward, and not in a way that's useful, just in a way that's relentless. What makes this especially is that most overthinkers slide between both. A moment of genuine reflection can tip almost invisibly into a spiral, and because the brain is actively engaged the whole time, it feels like progress. Cognitive psychologists have a name for this: the illusion of mental productivity. The mind feels like it's solving something. It isn't. It's just looping and getting chemically rewarded for doing so. That last part is worth sitting with. Your brain releases small amounts of dopamine during problem solving. And here's the thing: it doesn't distinguish between actually solving a problem and just thinking really hard about one. So when an overthinker runs through a scenario for the fourth time, constructing mental arguments, rehearsing outcomes, the brain is getting a small hit of reward just for the activity, not for the answer. Just for thinking. Which is why telling someone to simply stop thinking about it is about as useful as telling someone to simply stop being hungry. There's a neurochemical pull involved, and willpower alone doesn't touch it. Here's something the research found that genuinely surprised me when I first came across it. A 2013 study published in Psychologists, Neuroscience, found that people who reported higher levels of rumination also scored significantly higher on measures of cognitive empathy, the ability to understand and anticipate how other people think and feel. They're more attuned to social nuance, more aware of how words land, more sensitive to the emotional texture of a room than most people ever notice. The same engine that makes overthinking exhausting is the one that makes these people extraordinarily perceptive. Which means if you recognize yourself in this, the trait you've probably spent the most energy wishing you could turn off is also one of the most human things about you. But perception without resolution is its own kind of weight. You notice everything. You feel the full mass of possibilities. And the more you think, the further clarity seems to retreat because there's a quiet truth that psychology keeps returning to. The mind cannot think its way out of every problem. Some things have to be felt. Some things have to be decided imperfectly and moved on from. Some things simply have to be let go, not because you've stopped caring, but because holding them isn't helping anyone, least of all you. Therapists work with chronic overthinkers often use a framework from acceptance and commitment therapy called cognitive diffusion. The core idea is simple, though practicing it is anything but. You learn to observe a thought rather than become it. Instead of this situation being dangerous and I need to figure it out right now, the shift is quieter. My brain is generating a concern. One version pulls you completely under. The other gives you just enough distance to breathe. What all of this adds up to isn't a diagnosis. It's a portrait. A mind that never quite learned it was safe to stop, that was trained by early experience to stay vigilant, to think ahead, to anticipate is not a broken mind. It's a very capable one, still running a program that was written for a different environment. Understanding that doesn't instantly change how the thoughts feel, but it changes their authority. And that shift, small as it sounds, is often where things start to move. We all carry patterns we didn't choose. The ones that protected us once don't always know when the danger has passed. And sometimes the most radical thing a mind like that can do the thing it's most resistant to and the thing it needs most is to simply let itself rest. If this kind of thinking resonates with you, there's a lot more of it here. Subscribe to Decoded Psychology. Every week we go deeper into the psychology behind who we are and why we do what we do. Next week, we're exploring why some people feel most alone when they're surrounded by others and what that quietly reveals about the way they were wired to connect. You might not want to miss it.